So I come back to that wonderful, wonderful quote in Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince, that much loved fable from Antoine de Saint Exupery. It is only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. And this is a core teaching. It's almost the central teaching of the Christian contemplative path when we understand contemplation in the way it was originally known and seen in the church tradition as luminous seeing. Not as silence, just as we often think of it today, not as a lifestyle, but as a different way of seeing, a capacity of peering deeply into the heart of reality, beyond the disordered and sometimes, frankly, upside down versions of reality that we see with our usual mind and our usual senses. To look at something of a deeper coherence, compassion, intensity, and integrity. To look at that and to know it's there. And to be able then to steer our course in alignment with that higher order of reality. So that is what was mean, and that was the original calling and nature of the contemplative vocation, and why the contemplative vocation was regarded so highly in the history of the church, because it was sort of like a GPS, a God positioning system. And in that system, it became possible to follow a way of life that you could call a beatitude way of life, a way of higher integrity, higher compassion, higher abundance, and higher love. There is in the Christian mystical tradition a rich treasury of teaching for seeing with the eye of the heart. The most concentrated dose of it exists in the teaching of the Eastern Orthodox tradition, where it also spills over into tradition very closely shared and guarded in the Sufi tradition, the mystical arm of Islam. And here there is a whole art and science that has to do with the nurturing of this other kind of seeing. It's often referred to in our tradition as seeing with faith. And I think this is absolutely correct, but we don't understand it anymore. We don't understand a lot of what we mean by the ancient religious teachings, which is a big problem that I'll be coming back to again and again in these days. We've lost the sense of things. So for many of us nowadays, faith has been construed to mean leaping into the dark. And the higher the probability of defying logic and reality, the greater your faith. You know, leap off the cliff and see if God will swoop you up. Remember, that's the temptation that the devil posed to Jesus, right? But we often take that as the sign of faith now. Faith means leaping into the dark, and if everything logical says go left, faith means go right. But this is not what faith meant to St. Paul or the other great people who pioneered these terms. Faith meant really seeing in the dark. So you weren't flying blind at all. You were merely seeing according to a more subtle and yet more intense and higher pattern. You could see the hidden pattern. If any of you love those kind of dot matrix pictures where you have to look at all the little dots, and then all of a sudden at the middle of the dots, a flower appears, that would be what faith is. It's like being able to see the flower hidden in the dot matrix pattern. It's a higher order of seeing, which brings with it a higher order of competence and coherence in doing. Something we're going to look at. So there's plenty of training about steering with faith, if we can get back what it means. But the real requirements as we come back and look at this teaching in our own era are two. First of all, we have to understand what it is. What does it really mean to see with the heart? And second, we have to look at the practical instructions given for learning to do this. And they are, in fact, quite practical and specific instructions. So that's what we're going to be occupying ourselves with in the next 4 days. And this is admittedly simply a groundbreaking. And by that I mean it's a groundbreaking for us collectively. I know that many of you have probably been working for half a lifetime or a whole lifetime on seeing with the heart and walking the path that you see. And I'm sure that the reason that most of us are here today is because we've all done just that. The path of logic and reason would say, oh, it's too dangerous, go run, hide. Something else sees what needs to be done and does it. And we're going to look at what that is, because it isn't just a gift, and it isn't just a technique. It's a subtle way of holding the two so that we're both working at full intensity and full commitment, and also receiving from beyond anything that we could create or sustain. So that's what we're talking about, and I would like to say, if I haven't sort of implied already, that my interests here are completely and totally practical. You know, whatever contemplation used to be up till 2020, the year of perfect vision, it no longer is. It's as if everything we have been doing since the 1970s, since the real beginning of the revival of contemplative practice within the Christian community as a heart, at large, has set us up to be willing to go through the eye of the needle of this moment. And coming out on the other side of the eye of this needle is going to be a contemplation that looks much more prophetic, much more collective, much more inescapably committed to the path of the world. And what's on our plate right now, as we know it, is a world that's staggering under fear and disorientation. We're dealing with the double whammy of a crisis, of the breakdown of our climate systems, and the breakdown of institutional structures that have carried us, in some case, for 2,500 years.